I got you some tea. And I got me some tea too, because we're talking dating in Mexico today. And this is a video I am really nervous to do because I'm scared to death of the comments. But I started this channel for a single mom because as a single mom, when I started traveling, I had so many questions and there were very few people that actually had information on YouTube. I feel like it's an important video. So it'll just be you, me, and our tea today. Hope you're okay with green tea. It's pretty good. Start with why I decided to date in Mexico. First of all, hi, I'm Karen, if you're new to me, and I've been traveling full-time with my two daughters for over 5 years. And when we first started in 2018, on February 1st, 2018, we had to go to Miami every few months for the girls to see their dad. Dating really wasn't something that I had considered at the very beginning. It took me a while to start dating, and then I only dated in Miami, which is where my family and their dad is, because that seemed like the logical thing. I have to keep going back here, so this is where I'm gonna use as my dating hub. When we got a house in Mexico and decided to use Mexico as our hub, then I realized, I'm like, you know what? I'm loving Mexico. This is a place I love to be. I spent a lot of time here. Maybe if I fell in love here, I would stay. And I can't say yes or no to that thought, but it is something I considered, and therefore I thought I'd give dating a chance. So when I first started traveling, of course, I made sure that I told the people that I dated this, that I wasn't sure if I was gonna stay here, because I am a traveler, and that was the whole purpose of us coming to Mexico. It's a learning opportunity for my kids. My kids world school, and that's what we came to Mexico to do, to understand, to learn the culture, to see everything it has to offer, and see how other people live. And we've learned so much, and we're so grateful for being here, because there's something so special about the way people here live their life. I feel like there's a care for self and a care for the world around you, and such a sense of family that I particularly love. And part of me thought, well, if I love this so much, it's possible then if I stay here and date here and fall in love here, I could create a family here that supports all those feelings. So I made myself a profile on Tinder that here supposedly is not the same way it's perceived in the US. And the US is kind of like hookup culture. Here it's just another dating app. I hear they also have Bumble and Hinge, but I've only used Tinder. And my first day was wonderful. He had a car, so he offered to pick me up at home, but I told him I'd rather meet at a plaza, and he was really nice and really gentle and really kind. He was a school teacher, and our first date was at a sweet shop. We had coffee and some pastries that he was really happy to share with me because it was part of his heritage, like traditional Mexican pastries, and it was great. Now, as far as what is it like to date an American versus a Mexican, I would say that he did all, like, open the car door, all the courteous things. He walked with me in the inside of the street. Like, every time we crossed the street, he would put me in the inside. That was my experience with most of the people that I've dated here. Things like, if I need to get a cab, they'll haul a cab for you. I find it like it's a very gentleman and polite culture, and in general, not only in dating. Like, one of the things that truly surprised me here is, like, I've fallen on the street a few times because the sidewalks are slippery, and every time I fall, like, you see 3 or 4 people run to my aid. 3 or 4 men run to my aid, and I don't know if that would happen in Miami. It hasn't been my experience. I was told before I started dating that Mexican men prefer to pay. So most of the time, you know, I kind of like felt my way through that. I would give them space to pay, but if I saw them being hesitant, I would offer, or to split or share, or, you know, or whatever. And there have been times if we, like, for example, I had somebody come from a nearby town, and we spent a long time together on the first day. So on the second day, I invited him out to breakfast. That is something I have done. How they feel about that, I can't really tell you, but I can just share my experiences and I let you deduce what you will with it, because I have definitely made my deductions from every experience that I have had. Now back to the apps. One thing that I have noticed, because I live in a fairly small town, there's only a certain amount of people available on the app. If I wanted to get more matches, I would have to open up the search, which means that we're talking about towns that are like an hour and a half away and things like that, which I have done because Tuxtla is close by, is an hour and a half away. So I have dated people from Tuxtla, but I find it really challenging dating somebody that is so far away. There's also people from all different cultures here. So even though Chiapas technically belongs to Mexico, it is the independent state of Chiapas, and therefore we have every little town around us has a slightly different culture, and a lot of them will move here to work as, I don't know, taxi drivers and different things. So it's a little challenging with the different cultures. For example, I have also been asked out off the apps, and some of the things that I've been asked have been like, oh, I would really like to get to know you. Could I, you know, maybe come to your house in the afternoons and just hang out with you and just chat to get to know you and your daughters. This has been offered to me maybe 2-3 times by people I meet. I am really big on conversation, so I tend to chit chat with a lot of people that I meet throughout my day. Those are the situations that I've been asked out through. What I gathered from that is like courting for some of the cultures here in Chiapas. It's a big deal, like just getting to know each other. Other people are about going on dates, which I would say those were more the people that I met on the app. Things I noticed on most of the dates I've been in, I never gotten kissed on the first date. That is very different than the US. I feel like in the US they at least try. There's also a technique that they seem to follow, you know, like let's do this first, let's do this later. Like I can't tell you what it is that they consider the steps to be, because I feel like they're different than in the United States. But I do feel like first they want to show you what they like and get to know you in that way to see if you guys are compatible, like if you like the things that they like. Once they decide though that they like you and that they think that they check off all your boxes, then they want to move to the stage of vamos a tratar. I put that in quotes because I feel like that might be a point of me not understanding what they mean. What I understand is that once they decide that they like you, they want to try to create a relationship. Whether this means that you're full on into a relationship or not, I'm not really sure, but I have been told this on the first date. There was a couple of people that I dated only once, and when I told them that I didn't feel like we were compatible or that I felt like we were looking for different things, they right away told me, I can't believe you didn't even try. Podíamos por lo menos tratar. This is something that is not part of culture in the US, so I find it very curious. I feel like we look for butterflies, we look for chemistry, we look for connection, not necessarily the checking off the boxes. And maybe I'm totally wrong, and if you're from the US and you look for the checking of the boxes, first of all, you'll love dating in Mexico, and second of all, how intriguing. Please do share. I want to know all the things. But yeah, I found it really curious. I feel like for me, I really need to know who you are as a person and like your inner thoughts for me to know if I like you enough to try to create something with you or try to create a relationship, you know? So it's a very curious subject for me, and something that I still don't think I quite understand. Now, once we move to the actual dating stage, I feel like things change a little bit, and it becomes more about doing the regular things that you do every day, I guess what I would call the mundane with you. They are very supportive and they wanna, I don't know, go to the grocery store with you and things like that. Out of all the guys I dated, only one never offered to take me to the grocery store or things like that. Everybody else was very willing to be part of my life, right? Or fix things around the house for me, etc., etc. Now, one thing I personally have noticed, and I am not 100% sure if this has to do with my personality or like a societal thing, but I have noticed that they find me a little too independent. They find me a little like not clingy enough, and I don't necessarily understand that because I feel like people in the US like their space for the most part, and I have children. Being a single mom, I found it challenging to cater to my children and cater to a relationship. There was a lot of things that they needed from me that I wasn't necessarily willing or able to do because of my kids. So I found that challenging, and I kind of feel like I am a very affectionate person and I love spending the time with the person I love. I also like doing the mundane with my partner, but I also really like my space. I really also like my time, and there's also a lot of things that I have to do on a regular basis that require my attention. So it's hard to say that I would be able to give all of me to somebody because all of me is already divided into different sections. So even though I considered myself to be very giving and loving and affectionate, I feel like it wasn't enough for the culture here. The other thing was during the courting stage, I am much more reserved. I need to know who you are, if I can trust you before I can maybe open up or be, you know, a certain level of affectionate, or even, you know, let you know that yes, I want to pursue you. And I feel like that was looked upon negatively here. I feel like a lot of the men that I have met in dating scenarios kind of thought I should be all in, that I should be pursuing. I'm not used to being pursuing. I'm part of the Caribbean culture. I'm from Venezuela, my dad was Cuban, my mom from Argentina, but I grew up in Miami, and so most of the guys that I dated in Miami were Latino, like Caribbean, like Haitian, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, and they're really big on pursuing. So I'm not used to being the one pursuing, so that was new to me. Again, take this as a grain of salt because we're just talking about my experience. It doesn't mean that everybody in Mexico is like that, and we're talking about southern Mexico. It also doesn't mean that people in the north are like that. Another thing that I found quite difficult was to express my inner thoughts and express past trauma. Even in relationships that I had experienced for about a month, I found it really difficult to share certain things and have them be acknowledged or respected. And in one relationship, it was hard for somebody to speak to me about my illness, for example. He believed that my trust in God should be the number one, and because I trusted in God, I shouldn't fear getting sicker or dying. I also found it hard to talk about highly emotional things, difficult to express my boundaries, like what respect meant to me, my time being respected and things like that, and have that be acknowledged. But most of all, I found it difficult being of another culture, having the person see our differences as a cultural issue. I feel like unless you've experienced different cultures, you don't really see differences as being something that just makes you culturally different. Something I think I thought I would love at the beginning was that I feel like here people date to marry. And that's not always the case in the US. And part of me always hated that. Like, I hate serial daters, right? I feel like you date to meet somebody and then hopefully grow into something more. So having it here be a little bit different, like, I thought I would actually love that. But I found it really difficult how fast a relationship moves in that sort of culture. For example, have somebody tell you, yeah, let's try to make this work on the first date. Needing some sort of commitment on the first date without you even knowing who this person is, right? I find that really difficult. Somebody drove me and showed me their home that what they were building on their first date. I'm guessing to like show me like the kind of person it is. Like, I told you that I'm building a house. He was a professional, he had a house, so he took me to show me these things. I thought that was really cool and interesting and super sweet of him, and at the same time felt like it was super fast. I also was proposed to before even a month of dating. That was quite difficult. And I also felt like it was a response to a situation that we have had. So instead of working through our emotions together, his solution was to propose. I could be wrong, and I don't really know what he was thinking in that moment, because we only lasted for another week after he proposed, because so many things changed during that time period for us. But yeah, I don't think that is something I could physically do. I need to really know somebody, and I feel like that's a slow process. I feel like if I tell you who I am, you might know the parts of me that I want to share with you, but it's not really until we spend time together and live through experiences in which you will actually get to know me, how I handle life, how I make my choices, and how I treat you in general. So I need time. I don't fall quickly, and it's funny because I'm very open to show love to everybody I meet, and I always tend to say that, and it's a very controversial subject. A lot of people either don't believe me or don't approve of it, but it is how I choose to live my life. I choose to lead with love and be open to loving everybody, but loving a partner to me is different. It's a different stage of life, and it's a different kind of commitment, and I need to know who you are before I make that commitment. I need to feel safe. I need to feel loved. I need to feel like you are attempting to understand me. And in a multicultural relationship, that is quite difficult. Understanding is probably the hardest part, because we come from two different worlds. So I might say one thing, and from that one thing, what I mean and what you understand can be totally different. I found communication to be really, really challenging. A couple of things that I came across on the dating apps is, one, there's a lot of married men. It seems to be common for men to have their wife with their kids and then date. I wouldn't call it an open relationship per se, but it does seem to be common. It also seems to be common for 20-year age gaps, 40-year-olds dating 20-year-olds. There's been plenty of times that I got into cabs and there's been music playing in Spanish about this, like the young and innocent girl being seduced by the older man. I'm assuming it's part of the culture, maybe not. Like I said, Mexico has a lot of little cultures, so maybe not all the cultures, but in the state that I live, seems to be quite common. Like a 30-year-old getting a 15-year-old pregnant, not necessarily frowned upon by everybody. And this might be a controversial point, but I do feel like a 40-year-old that dates a younger person is because they're looking for that type of mentality. As a 45-year-old woman, my mentality has changed between my 20s and 30s and 40s. Dating a man that looks for the mentality of a 20-year-old wouldn't work for me because I have the mentality of a 45-year-old. So that's definitely another challenge. I do want somebody that has reached that level of growth. And I tend to date older men because of this, but I don't find that it's an age thing. I do find that there's 50-year-olds that haven't had that level of growth, even if they are 50. I also find that men here are very big on family. First, let me say that I've never been introduced to the family. I'm assuming I was never important or special enough to any of these men that I dated to be introduced to the family. That's my assumption. But I do know that most of them have lived with their parents. Most of them are still fed by their mothers, like their moms were the ones that cooked all the main meals in the household. All of them have been divorced with kids, and after the divorce they have gone back to live with their parents. That makes intimacy a little interesting, and I'm not talking about intimacy in the bedroom. I'm just talking about spending intimate time together. It makes it a little bit difficult because the only place that would happen would really be in my home. Only one of the guys that I dated actually had his own home. Even then, like, I never felt truly welcomed in his home. It was more like, you know, we would have a date in his home, if you know what I mean. Now that has happened to me occasionally in the United States too, not with everybody, but it has happened to me. So that wasn't completely out of the norm. This person had lived in the United States, so I'm guessing, you know, that's part of the reason that he had that style of living. But having them be really big into family made the fact that I don't live with my family, that I am so independent and my family's in a whole other country, made that kind of awkward and weird. And sometimes frowned upon, I would say. There were a couple of comments made about that. Another thing that I would merit to me being an extranjera would be money. The assumption that I have a lot of money, and I feel like most extranjeros that live in Mexico would probably agree that that is a general assumption that is made. As an immigrant to the United States, I would say that that was it. Even in Venezuela, it was an assumption. When you moved to the United States, all of a sudden you had money because you were earning dollars. There's a lot of things that are not common knowledge about, like the cost of living in the United States. So automatically, if you were from the United States, you had money. So there was one scenario in which I went on a date with a guy, had a wonderful time, and the next day he's like, I was thinking about it, and I guess dating you would probably not be the best thing because of the money. I have never been told that. I have to be honest. I was grateful for the honesty, but taken aback, which I think brings me to the last point. Like, is there no romance? Like, you know, like, I've had the boxes, like the thing about, okay, you gotta check the boxes, and I've had the situation with the money. So I'm wondering, like, oh, and the situation with let's try, right? So what about falling in love? Is that not a thing? And it's funny because a lot of the soap operas I watched as a kid were from here. My mom always watched Mexican soap operas, and of course they're about love. They have a lot of drama too. But it was really surprising for me that in dating culture, I have not experienced that wish for romance, for the butterflies, for the falling in love, for the meeting your other half. I was super surprised by that, especially when I was told that about the money. And let me explain it a little bit farther. What I understood from it is that he felt like he didn't make enough money to date me. And he was a professional. He was an engineer. He was in between jobs, even though he had passive income and owned properties, which I don't own properties. So I felt like he did have things that I didn't have, you know? I feel like in relationships, you need things that complement each other, right? So I found it quite interesting that he felt like he needed to make a certain amount of money to be able to date me. I found that curious. I found that very curious. Like, we stopped dating and we became friends, and a few time, and a couple of days later we were hanging out and he kissed me, which was quite confusing for me because, like I mentioned, people don't take kissing here lightly. So that was quite confusing for me. And we ended up having a conversation about that afterwards, because I'm like, I like clarity, like romance. Maybe that pursuing thing that I told you that I'm not very good at is what he was particularly looking for. Maybe he was looking for me to be like, oh no, it doesn't matter that you don't believe that you could make me happy. I like you enough to think that you could make me happy. I don't know if that was what he was looking for. I'm not really sure. I can tell you most of the relationships ended of things like that. I think most of my relationships, and I don't mean like boyfriend or girlfriend necessarily. I'm talking about us communicating for more than one date, right? And a lot of them dated because I just didn't understand. There was a guy that I really liked and we started dating, and like after 3 weeks he thought I was asking him for a relationship, and he told me he didn't want a relationship. And then things just got weird after that, when I told him that I was not asking him for a relationship, that it takes me a long time to know if I want a relationship. He didn't know, like to him I could either be a girlfriend or nothing. There was no respect in between the two. He told me he doesn't have friends that are girls, and I found that really challenging. It is something I've heard a couple of times from Mexican men, that they can't have friends that are girls, so I found that challenging. But I've also had a couple of guys that have said that they could be friends. That hasn't been achieved. I can't honestly say that I have many guy friends here in Mexico. I actually don't have. I mean, I consider the teacher at that teaches English that I help out with, I consider him a friend, but we're not hangout friends, we're school friends. I don't know if men can be friends here. I have a lot of men that are friendly, and I have like a wonderful neighbor and things like that. But yeah, I guess I don't know if Mexican men can be friends, but it has not been my experience. To summarize it, and you know, I don't know if this helped you. If you're a single mom that's thinking of using Mexico as your home base for travel, or living here full time, these are things that you might want to consider. It has been my experience, so I can't tell you that this will be yours, but these are things that I found highly curious. And I have to say that after these experiences, I have decided to stop dating in Mexico. The straw that broke the camel's back would have been that I was called a feminist by one of the guys. And this was because he was, you know, he was talking about his ex-wife, and he was sharing a story about how he really liked her wearing heels, and she wouldn't just put on the heels, like he had to ask her, and how he felt really bad about that looking back in his relationship, and how that would not be something that he would want in his next partner, right? By this point in our relationship, we had already decided to stop dating, so I felt, you know, comfortable enough to be like, well, honestly, I kind of understand where she's coming from, because there's certain things that, like, to me, the way I dress is my self-expression. I am a very artistic human being, and so the way I dress really means a lot to me. And I haven't worn shorts since I was 17, so if you asked me to wear a pair of shorts, would I wear it? Probably not. I find them highly uncomfortable, and I have big thighs, so it doesn't work for me. If I loved you and you asked me to do it once, would I? Yeah, probably. But would I do it regularly just because it's what you enjoy? No, probably not. I'm sorry to say that, probably not. So because I shared this with him, he called me a feminist, and to me that made me realize, kind of made me throw my hands up in the air. I said, you know what, maybe I am. Maybe I am. And especially in a cultural way, I feel like something like that might not be considered a feminist in the United States. I think it's something that is quite common. Like, you dress how you want. You don't dress how your husband tells you to dress. But maybe here it is. So I personally came to the conclusion that I do not know enough about Mexican culture to have a relationship with a Mexican. I don't. I wish I did, because I love the people. I love everybody that I have met, and even though some of these dates or the people that I have dated have not maybe ended positively, I think they were all wonderful people in their own way for different reasons. I just find it really difficult to have a relationship with somebody I don't quite understand, and I don't really feel like understands me. I won't be able to give them what they need or want or expect from a partner, and vice versa. Now you may ask, since I found the cultural aspect of dating in Mexico to be one of the hard parts, why don't I date expats? And well, one, I live in a very nomadic town, so a lot of the people that come here that I would consider an expat are usually travelers, meaning in and out. But also I feel like everybody leaves their country for a different reason. So that in itself, I find it to be a cultural divide. I've heard things like, oh, I ran away from my country. I personally don't feel like I ran away from the United States. I have nothing against the United States. I'm more like a explorer. Like, I like exploring new places and the way other people live their lives, and I feel like you can learn so much about yourself from just seeing other ways of existing. That to me, it's a divide between me and other potential expats that I could date, like the reason why we're here. But I'm not opposed to dating expats. It just, like I said, I live in a very small town, so there aren't that many people to choose from. Also, being a traveler, I would love somebody that is open to that kind of life, even if it's not traveling full-time. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I do foresee myself in the future having a farm and, you know, staying in one place and raising my cute cows and pigs and chickens. But I also want to have the experience of traveling every once in a while, even if I stay put in one place. So did I give up forever? I don't know. I can't say one way or another, but I definitely stopped for the moment. For the rest of the year, we're gonna be traveling. It's probably another reason. So I stopped dating around February, and I don't really foresee myself dating until at least next year. I hope this was helpful to you. I really do. I would say it's a really hard topic, especially as a single mom. I feel like when I was married, I had a wonderful relationship for a good chunk of time. I would say for 10 years. Then things turned bad. And, you know, when a marriage fails, you always question it, like is it my failure, you know? Like, could I have done anything better? And I can tell you that I personally tried in my relationship, you know, friendship, or even with my kids. I really try to be understanding and take deep dives in whatever it is that isn't working. And being that I found that people here were really willing to open up in a psychological level, I didn't really know how to grow together, because that's the only way I know how to grow with somebody. I hope to one day find somebody that loves me as much as I love them and create a team. Excuse me. I think having a team is great, but I'm also perfectly okay with it just being me and my kids. I love spending time with them. I love traveling with them, and I hope to continue it at least until they're 18. So thank you so much for watching. Love you. Bye. Thank you for having tea with me. I truly appreciate it. And don't kill me in the comments.